welcome to the PrePost Film Review. I'm John Asquith.
And I'm Matt Stevenson. So the way things work here at PrePost is that we're going to talk about a film over two distinct periods. So first you're going to hear John and myself chat about the trailer for Dunkirk. This part of the podcast is going to be spoiler free. We're just going to give our sort of expectations and impressions based on just the trailer. Then the podcast will jump forward in time and you'll hear John and myself give a full review of the film after we've seen it. And that part is going to be chock full of spoilers, so don't listen to that until you've seen the full film itself. So here are our trailer thoughts for Dunkirk.
What has happened is a colossal military disaster. We shall go on to the end. We shall never surrender.
Alright, so John, we've just watched the new teaser trailer. It's quite a brief teaser for Christopher Nolan's new film, Dunkirk. I'm curious to hear what your expectations are, given that we're both pretty big Nolan fans.
Yeah, I think on a basic level, I'm very excited for this because it is Christopher Nolan. And he hasn't tackled subject matter like this before. A big war epic, but he seems very suited to doing something like this. So it seems right in his wheelhouse. And I kind of like that he's getting away from like the genre stuff, sci-fi, superhero,
Magicians.
Yeah. Magicians, yeah, that old magician genre. There's no, this is a bad word to use, but there's no gimmick, to this. It's a historical event, it's sort of war epic. So I'm excited. Based on the teaser, I think it looks great. There's some beautiful, beautiful imagery, dark, haunting imagery, but beautiful nonetheless in this. Doesn't show a lot, but suggests a lot, which every good teaser should do. So you've got the ticking of the clock, you've got the siren slowly starting up, like the air raid siren. The suspense there, it just is palpable in this teaser already. I love the shots that it ends on, this sort of long take of all the soldiers in that barge or wherever they are, on a pier. Couldn't tell, but and they slowly realize that the enemy's coming. They all look up and huddle down. That's just so cool and such a Nolan shot. He loves these sort of classic, I guess you'd say Spielberg-esque kind of shots. It feels very classic, and he is quite a classic filmmaker in that sense. So yeah, I'm really excited. I think it looks great. That's all I need. I'm sold on this movie just with those few shots and knowing that Nolan's behind it. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is what a teaser should be, right, John? This is a teaser. Yes. It's good. It's a nice change to have something that's just a few little shots. Doesn't really tell you much, but gives you a taste of the tone of the film, the kind of look that Nolan's going for. I think it looks really good. The ticking clock in particular, sort of that building suspense, it feels very claustrophobic. It's reminiscent of his other. I feel like that sort of ticking clocky sound has been used in Dark Knight or maybe multiple other films.
Dark Knight and Inception.
Yeah, so it's like a Nolan trope at this stage, I guess, but a good one, I think. I think it bodes well that such a simple series of shots could be so effective. I will say that I'm not overly excited about another World War II film. I mean, if I had to, even though like you said, it's good to see him getting away from genre filmmaking, particularly like superheroes and all that sort of stuff. Not that he ever made the traditional superhero films, but
No, but he's been in genre filmmaking for a long time now.
Yeah. So I would agree that it's good to see him try something different, but if I had to pick, my pick wouldn't be World War II film. I feel that's sort of a genre that's been, or a topic that's been done to death a little bit. But I guess if there is someone that's going to have a crack at it, I'd happily see Nolan do it more, sooner than anyone else. So I guess my hope is that he can bring something to the table that is a little bit different. I think that, the very least, his love for practical effects and, shooting on film and everything will give it a look and a texture that most war films don't have. There won't be like CGI planes flying around everywhere. I think it'll look very gritty and real.
No, it won't look like Red Tails, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm not like mega pumped, but
yeah,
because it's a Nolan film, I'm always going to be excited for a Nolan film, and the trailer bodes well. So I think it's going to be good. I don't think it'll be like my favourite Nolan film. I think it'll be a solid entry into his filmography.
The call went out. We have to go to Dunkirk. Ready on the stern line.
What are you doing? You know where we're going.
Into war, George.
I'll be useful, sir.
One of ours.
He's on me.
I'm on him.
Okay, here we are. We've escaped the beaches, the chilly beaches of Dunkirk. And we've got a nice blanket around us and a little apple and some beer and a train. That happens at the end of the movie. And anyway, we're going to talk about Dunkirk. Is what's going to happen now. We've seen the film. We're pretty positive going into this one, Matt. As we always say, it's exciting when Christopher Nolan has a new film out. So let's just jump straight in. What were your general thoughts on Dunkirk?
Yeah, well, I've seen Dunkirk twice now, which I think helped a bit. It helped me sort of like solidify my thoughts on the film a little bit more. I still think I'm trying to process parts of how I feel. But like you said, I was super excited going in. I pretty much liked every single thing Nolan's done. I had, some issues with Interstellar, which you can listen to on our Interstellar episode, but overall liked it. And I really, I guess, off the bat, I do really like Dunkirk. I sort of had mixed emotions with both screenings. On one hand, there's something just utterly impressive about how it's kind of just the purest form of expression that he's ever done. He's kind of like the things that I had problems with in Interstellar, like him trying to get too emotional or sort of fumbling through themes of love and that sort of thing, that he never sort of sat well with him. He's just completely disregarded all that, and it's like it's almost an art film in some ways, right? Like there's no plot, basically. There's barely any character development. Half the film's like a silent film. It's almost like, telling a story in the purest cinematic sense possible, which I love. And the filmmaking, like technically, his filmmaking skill is just incredible. We were talking about it after seeing it the first time, and he just understands tension. He knows how to make just trying to like line up some crosshairs onto another plane 10 times more tense than anything in any sort of big CGI filled Transformers film or superhero film. He just really understands like the craft of cinema. But having said that, this is kind of like just under 2 hours of nothing but tension, which is in itself impressive, but I think also wears a bit thin, or perhaps could have, done with something a little bit more, maybe. So I'm kind of in two minds. Part of me loves that it has the balls to not give us any of that, but then at the same time, especially seeing it a second time, I kind of felt, especially when you know what's going to happen, you feel that there's nothing much beyond the constant tension. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an incredible film, and I would pretty much recommend it to anyone just as a cinematic experience, for sure. But I'm not 100% sort of sure where I fall within his filmography. Like, I love it, but I don't know whether it's sort of up the top end or in the middle at this point. What about you, John? How did you feel?
Yeah, I think you raised some really good points there, and we're probably on a similar wavelength as always. I think this film is mostly just incredible. I think, particularly from a technical standpoint, it as you said, it feels like an art film more than, say, an action war movie or a historical, emotional retelling of an event. It still has that Christopher Nolan coldness, I would say, that detachment. But that works for this movie and for what he was trying to do, I think, which is just assault your senses, and really make you feel like you've gone through something by the time the film ends. And that plays to the strengths and the weaknesses of the film. As you say, like, it kind of starts at 10 and stays there for pretty much most of the movie. There's a few little bits of respite, and there are a few little dialogue moments, but yeah, mostly it is Hans Zimmer's score, pounding, and just this beautiful technical feat of photography that he pulls off, cinematography. So I think on a visceral level, it's incredible. And when it was over, I did feel a bit exhausted, like I needed, like going outside where it was quiet, like there was a difference, like my brain needed like a little break. I think where it falls apart a little bit is the narrative structure of the sort of three main storylines or three main timelines that we're following, and that crossover didn't work for me. I think the movie would be better without that stuff. That would have belonged more in Interstellar or Inception, and I think this is a total guess, but I have a feeling that's something that Christopher Nolan wanted to do and just thought he'd like put it in this war movie that he was making, because it didn't fit for me. I admire the courage of doing it, but I think it hurts the film, and it feels a little bit like, he's trying to be too clever for what the film is. And I think the film is an experiment in making you feel like you're going through this harrowing, frightening experience that is relentless, as war is. And to have that timeline stuff on top, it's like you're doing the mental puzzle of that as well. And that just didn't sit right with me. It doesn't ruin the film, but I didn't like it, and I didn't think it was explained very well. Or it's not until sort of halfway through the movie that you really understand what's going on. Unless I'm just slow, and I probably am, but you get those titles quickly at the start that are like 1 day, 1 week, 1
Yes,
month,
1 week, 1 day, 1 hour. Yeah.
1 hour, yeah. Yeah, I didn't quite understand. Like, I guess, like, is this what's going on? But it wasn't, as I say, till halfway through the movie that actually clicked into place for me. And if that was, like, because they were travelling through time or there was some sci-fi element, I think that's a really cool idea. But, yeah, I'm not sure that it worked for this. So, I don't know. Maybe I sound too negative. I think I was in awe of the movie when I was watching it. And I saw it, I didn't see it at IMAX, but I saw it 70mm projection, and it was just gorgeous. Like as you say, I would recommend it to anyone to see at the theater, because it is a one of a kind experience that Christopher Nolan delivers every time, and very few other filmmakers are now. I mean, the language of film that he uses is very classical, and he has such a reverence for the history of cinema. And I was thinking, actually, when I was watching this, talking about how it feels almost like a bit like an art film. it feels like something that would be in... There was this great TV series that we both watched, Matt, called The History of Film? Or The Story of Film?
Story of Film, I think.
Something like that. Anyway, it went through it. It was very in-depth, kind of like, university level standard of like film history. And this feels like something you would see in that, where it's like this slightly esoteric take on a war movie. It's not pulling at your heartstrings. It's not going for melodramatic moments at all. It's experimenting with cinema to give you a sense of what it's like to be in this environment. But it is, experimental idea. Like, I didn't expect that going in, that it's a cinematic experiment, and it's less concerned with the plot compared to his other films in particular. The more recent ones, which are just like plot and character overload almost.
It gets a bit bogged down in plot, or it has in recent years. I mean, I've loved it all, but there is an argument to be made about something like Inception or even The Prestige is just so plot heavy.
Yes. Yeah.
This is the exact opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit mixed. Mostly, very positive, and I'd say this is in the upper echelon of his work, just because of. Mainly because on the technical level, I gotta say, like, for me, that's good enough. There's so many shots in this that you're just in awe of, and so much of it is practical. I don't know how they filmed some of these shots. Like,
it's amazing.
I don't know. What do you think of the time stuff?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because I disagree with that. Like, I really liked the time structure, but I had the same experience as you. Like, I didn't understand the 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour when it came up. And it took, it's not until you sort of see Cillian Murphy's character the second time in the boat, sort of trying to, not shell-shocked, that you kind of get or start to get a picture of how this is working. But I thought it was like a really interesting way of exploring the tension of war and how like different parts or, different aspects of the war are like terrifying in their own way, so being a man on the ground, you have to spend like weeks or a week of like in constant fear of your life, but being up in the air, you have like most of the time doing nothing, and then you just have 1 hour of like constant terror. Or like on the sea, it's like that time period is in the middle, you only have like a day or whatever around that is different. I really liked it. Felt like it was kind of exploring that temporal side of things, and
that makes sense.
I also feel like if it didn't have that structure, I know it is a bit of a gimmick or a bit of a trick, the lack of narrative or the lack of any story or character would have been much more obvious, and I think potentially a bit boring, or you would have felt it a lot more if you didn't have this sort of puzzle to click together at the same time. So I really enjoyed that, and like I also don't want to come off as sounding negative either. Like you said, I really loved the film, and when it almost, part of me wants to sort of declare it the best thing he's ever made, just because of the purity of it, and it's just like
I'm up there with you.
It could be the best thing he's ever done, but then part of me is pulling me in the opposite direction, just saying maybe it needs some character or other little bits and pieces, which sort of contradicts what I appreciate about the art filmness of it. I'm just very conflicted, John. I'm very conflicted.
No, that's exactly how I feel. I think you raise a good point about the time. Like it in that sense, it all fits together. And in particular, like the movie does start. We talked about this in the trailer. The movie starts with the sound of a ticking clock.
Yeah.
And it comes back again throughout the movie quite a lot.
It's almost about time, or it's about,
It is. Yeah, it totally is. And so I can't fault it for not being consistent.
If you're looking for an emotional connection as well, that structure takes away from that further than adding to it. I feel like it adds to the coldness because it's more of a like logic puzzle than it is like an emotional, letting you emotionally engage with the film.
I mean, having said that, I was emotionally engaged a couple of times. I think, there's hardly any dialogue in the movie, but Mark Rylance does
He's great.
a very good job. Like, that guy just oozes like charm and heart and
Yeah.
nobleness. Even when he's playing like a Russian spy in Bridge of Spies.
Yeah.
He's very good in this, and he's like sort of a noble everyman that you sort of latch onto, is quite an inspiring figure.
Definitely.
There's also a moment where all the sort of civilian ships turn
True.
up, and the music swells. It's like the only time the music gets a bit heroic, and I felt quite emotional then. And I imagine if you were British and quite sort of attached to this story, that would be, you know, quite an emotional moment as well.
Definitely. I also think like it's refreshing to see a film where the heroic act isn't like winning the battle. You know what I mean? Like I like that it's taking an event which, I guess, not that I knew much about what happened at Dunkirk, but presumably was seen as a failure. You know, something cowardly where they had to retreat and they were crushed by the enemy, into some like it's finding the positivity and the heroism in.
I really love that.
People, civilians coming to help, and it's more about helping your fellow man, as opposed to like killing the enemy. You know that.
Yeah, exactly.
I really
and merely surviving.
Yeah,
you know, they have those. I really like at the end where the Harry Styles weirdly is in this movie, although he does a good job.
He does.
But he's ashamed. You know, he's like, we didn't do anything. All we did is escape.
Yeah.
And that the older blind man who's handing out the coats or whatever says, you know, that's enough, son, or something like that.
Yeah.
I really like that. I thought that was a great little motif of the movie.
And I think that's the other thing, right? Like it's one about time, but it's also sort of like an examination or an argument against cowardice, or sort of like arguing that what happened wasn't cowardice, or like retreating isn't an act of cowardice. You know, like it puts you in that situation, so you realize, like, if I was on that fucking beach, I would be getting the fuck out of there. You know, like they do not feel like what they're doing is something to be scorned. Like there is something heroic about just managing to survive the shit that they went through.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's interesting to see all the different ways, particularly the guys. The foot soldiers that are on the beach, and they carry, you know, at the start they're carrying the stretcher to kind of like sneak on, and then they miss out that way, and you know there's like this series of, it's almost like Castaway or something. It's like this survival movie, you know, where they're trying all these different little experiments to just get off the damn beach.
Yeah, slightly get off the beach, and then they're back on the fucking beach, like the next morning or whatever, because the ship sunk or whatever. That's very true. And it's just... I think...
Sorry, you go. I was just going to say, on the idea of how it's not about victory in the traditional sense and about killing the enemy, I thought it was a great choice to never show the enemy either. You always have bullets flying at you, but you never see where they're coming from. You never cut away to like some Germans... planning things or whatever. Even in that great opening sequence where the leaflets come down and they're getting shot at as they're trying to climb over the... I mean, I was in love with the movie at that point, like straight away. Like, it is such a strong opening.
It's such a bold but brilliant decision not showing, like not ever cutting to a German firing a gun. Like,
ever. Yeah.
Because it just heightens the threat of that. Like it's like the classic horror movie thing that, you know, whatever you don't show is scarier than what you see.
Exactly.
Right? Like not knowing where they are, but knowing they're right there. The presence is so suffocating. Like it just feels like they could be just behind the dunes there, you know, like
exactly.
You never see him, but the presence is constantly felt throughout the film, which I guess is also a testament just to his control of the suspense and the score, which is like borderline horror film score, really. Like it's really almost frightening at times.
It is.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. I loved that choice not to show the German. Like just talking about this with you now is making me like bump it up, and
same.
Maybe it is his best film, John. It's just so pure and so good.
I don't know. Yeah, I think, oh man, I can't speak because I'm thinking of 5 different things to say. Just slow down, John. Singing the praises, now I'm going to switch back for a second, because thinking about that and thinking about how good it is and just deciding whether it's up there with some of his best work or perhaps his best. I'm curious what you thought of the very end, because it ends in a strange way, I think, with the young foot soldiers are on the train. I liked that stuff, and the guy gives them the beers through the window, and he starts reading the newspaper, and it's they're going through that whole thing about how it's actually heroic to survive, and but then you have Tom Hardy landing the plane and getting captured.
Yep.
So I guess the idea is that he made the ultimate sacrifice in the end, because he's probably not getting away from there. But then there's this image of the plane burning, and it cuts to black, and then there's like 1 second of our sort of main young lead looking up from the newspaper, and then that's the end of the film. And I didn't know what to make of that, and I still don't. I'm still not quite sure. He seems to have some kind of realization or something, but it's, that's obviously a very specific way to end the film, and there's a purpose behind it, but I can't decipher what's going on there.
I agree with you. It's very odd, and the shot is almost like very, very slightly just too short. He kind of just looks up, and you expect it to go on for just half a second longer would be a normal edit size or something, but then it just cuts to black, and it cuts on a weird sound effect. This is weirdly specific, but it cuts to black on like this weird slight scrunch of a newspaper sound effect.
Yes.
It's really odd. I have no idea either, but I kind of love it because it adds to that art filmy feel of it. I love the ballsiness of it, that he's ending this big Hollywood film on a strange little note like that. On the surface, I think you're right. There's some sort. It does seem like he has some realization. Maybe it's as simple as him just sort of acknowledging the fact that he shouldn't feel bad about escaping, or something as simple as that. I don't know. I haven't really come to a decision either. But I totally agree. It's a very strange way. Did it work for you, or did it not work for you? Did it annoy you?
Yeah, I admire, as you said, the idea of the balls of it, but I'm not sure. I want to think about it and try and link it. But that's a good
thing, right? To leave you on a note that makes you want to think, as opposed to just watching the plane burn, or some action.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's very true.
The only if we're going to talk about be a bit critical, I suppose there's only two sort of things I would bring up. One is the ending on the speech, which feels a little, cliched. To end a war film on a heroic speech is very familiar territory. Though, on a second viewing, I appreciated it a bit more, just given that the content of the speech wasn't your normal speech that you hear. And I guess it is kind of nice just to verbalise some of those themes, to hammer them home. Maybe potentially not necessary, but I think it's not too bad. The only other thing that the only other Hollywoody thing is that as soon as that kid jumps on the boat, it's you knew nothing good was going to come of it. That was a little bit predictable. Either one of two things: either he was going to do something amazing and save the day, or he was going to die. That was the only two ways that little plot was going to pan out. But having said that, I really enjoyed the way the sort of that played out with Cillian Murphy's character, and the way they dealt with it, and when he sort of tells him that he's going to be fine after he dies. That moment is an incredible little piece of cinema.
I loved that moment. Actually, that's probably, speaking earlier about emotional moments, I almost teared up actually at that point, because it
is a really good moment.
It's such a mercy that he's giving this man who's been through so much. I found that really effective.
And especially given the scene before when he loses it at him saying how he's not going to be okay, or he hurt him or whatever. I can't remember what he exactly says, but he sort of that young kid loses it for the first time and sort of screams at Cillian Murphy. It's a good sort of end. Well, actually, I also like the very end of that little story is when Cillian Murphy sort of finally gets off the ship and he looks back and sees them take the body off on the stretcher, and then the boy turns to look at him and he's just gone in the crowd. Like it's
in the crowd.
Such a beautiful little, I don't know, poetic beat to that little story, and not the way you'd normally think it would play out, either of those scenes. In a normal Hollywood film, it would be a big emotional screaming match, or some meltdown, or you know what I mean. Like, it's just a really nice, quiet end. Yeah,
and has to be one of the thousands and thousands of soldiers that came back that just has to deal now with this horrific stuff that they've been through, and that he's going to struggle with that. And
the only other thing I would say is on the second viewing, this was a bit more apparent. I think it might have sort of played into the first viewing, but I wasn't really aware of it, is that there's... And it ties in as well to you saying what you said before about it sort of starting at 11 and staying at that level of intensity, that there's not really a build to anything big. And it seems to set it up slightly. Like when they pick up Cillian Murphy's character off the wreckage of the ship, which is a great shot, like very evocative, him kind of like crouching there in the cold wind as they come up. It looks great. It almost looks like Batman or something with his little cloak flapping in the wind. But then when his reaction to going back to Dunkirk, he's like, I'm not going back, we're going to die. And once the time, starting to play with time, I just wanted to know what the fuck happened to him. Something horrible must have happened. But you kind of I don't even quite understand how he ended up on that boat. Because he was on the rowboat, going back, and what he seemed fine at that point. And then I mean, presumably he rowed back to get more survivors, because he talks about it was a torpedo, so presumably that was the ship that he was talking about that gave him such a horrific experience. But I don't know. It seems like there's a bit of a disconnect there. And also, the moment when all the timelines actually converge, which is when the bomber bombs that carrier ship or whatever, and it sort of capsizes, and then the oil sets fire. I feel like that's meant to be the sort of crescendo of the film. All the time periods meet. You've seen what happens to all three of your characters that you care about, but it doesn't, in terms of actual content of what's happening, doesn't feel any more intense than anything else that's been happening around it.
It doesn't.
Which I think is a missed opportunity. If you could have come up, or even just shot it in a way that felt grander or something, it would have helped with that sort of flow of intensity throughout the film.
No, I totally agree.
Which is a little bit of a missed opportunity, I guess. But maybe that's the point. Maybe he didn't want to do that. Maybe he wanted it it's meant to be that same level of intensity the whole way through, because that's kind of what it was like. There was no moment that was bigger than the rest. It's just war was horrific the whole time, and you're always tense.
It's always on. You're always on 10 when you're in it's just shit, constantly shit all the time.
Exactly. But I mean that's pretty minor. Criticism. Do you know what I mean? It's still such an achievement of a film.
It really is, and we probably sound maybe too negative or something. But it is an incredible film, and I think it's going to be studied, and it doesn't seem to be making the pop culture impact that something like Saving Private Ryan would. But again, that is the complete opposite style of storytelling, which is very... I don't want to say melodramatic, because I love that movie, but it certainly pulls on that sort of American idea of war and honor and heroes. And this is, as I said before, almost like an experiment in film, an experiment in storytelling. So I think, culturally it might not have that impact, but in terms of cinema and film lovers, I think it's going to have a huge one, and it could be, up at the peak of what Christopher Nolan's doing. It makes me I don't want him to go back to doing a conventional story now. I want him to push further.
Definitely.
keep making these sort of slightly strange, unconventional films, because he's got the clout and he's got the name that he can do it on such a big scale and get people into the cinema to see something that's a little bit different, and that's really cool.
Yeah, 100% agree. I'm so curious what he's going to do next. I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say we can't wait, but now I really can't wait.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's just a really good sign. It feels like he's maturing as a filmmaker. It feels like he's almost like addressing every criticism directly that I had with Interstellar. You know, like he's really interested in doing something different or playing to his strengths, I guess, is what this film does. Like he's really nailing what he does best. So yeah, man, I'm pumped to see what comes next.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the PrePost Film Review. We'd love to hear what you guys thought of Dunkirk. Did you find that a technical marvel like me and Matt? Did you sort of admire its ambition, or did it leave you feeling a bit frustrated or perhaps even a bit bored? We'd love to hear. So you can send us an email at prepostfilmreview@gmail.com, and we reply to every email we get. So
We do.
why not send one in?
That would be awesome. We're also on Facebook. You can find us over there and comment, send us a message. That's another way you can sort of engage with John and myself. We're also on Twitter. We're at PrePostFR. Occasionally sort of post news stories and new episodes and bits and pieces. And the most important thing is subscribe. So you can subscribe to us on whatever platform you're using to listen to our voices right now. We're on Stitcher and iTunes, anywhere you can find podcasts. And if you like the show, leave us a review. That would be greatly appreciated.
That would be great. You can also find us on Letterboxd, which we have links to in the show notes. And that's a good way to keep in touch with what else we've been watching and start your own little film diary of sorts. It's a great little website. You can join us next episode when we're going to be talking about the new Planet of the Apes film, War for the Planet of the Apes. It should be a interesting discussion.
I did feel a bit bad for the lead character, because he just couldn't take a shit throughout the whole film.
Oh yeah.
Must have been just dying to go by the end.
Man, he probably just did it at some point.
Yeah,
like,
I guess so.
There's dead
he would have
bodies everywhere.
Literally shit himself multiple times, probably.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure they all were. Yeah. We would love it if you would join us on our next episode, which fuck, I can't talk suddenly. Jesus. Alright. You can join us on... No, I don't need to... Forget the join. The join doesn't work.
What? Listen.
Do we?
What? I
Listen.
think you say
Yeah.
join us next episode. I think so. That's
Oh,
normal.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. The join's back in. Just keep it simple.
But it's just that's what you just called clapping, slapping.
Slapping. Well, it really is, isn't it?
Slapping your
Slap
hands.
your hands. Makes it sound like you're like doing this or something.
There's something like
Like
wet about it.
weird
Yeah.
clap. Yeah, it is. Something kind of gross. What a weirdo.
Oh, fuck.
Some weird guy that calls clapping slapping. Everyone was slapping. They were so impressed. What? Sorry.
Oh fuck! I've lost it. All right.